Good morning. Oh, come on. Good morning. I am hoping that you have had a great week. I know we're getting down to the end, but I think it's been a terrific conference. Hopefully you've learned some things. My name is Miriam McLemore. I'm an enterprise strategist at AWS, which we're kind of a unique group. We're all former CIOs, CTOs. We have a CISO and a CFO in our group. We're 13 people spread across the world. And our job is to work with our customers on their journey to adopting cloud technology and transforming their business. And so my topic for you today is succeeding in this world that is a much faster paced world than we used to operate in. And we all know it's amping up even more. Prior to joining AWS, I was a customer like you. I was the corporate CIO at the Coca-Cola company. I spent 26 years at Coke and worked hard on transforming that business. I had roles in finance, I was in marketing, I spent time in the North America business, and then ultimately retired from Coke as the corporate CIO after 26 years. So if you are from a large enterprise, I totally understand the challenge of getting an organization to move quickly, adopt new technology faster. And so that really is my subject for you this morning. Technology has changed, and I love this kind of little history story of the music, right? When I was growing up, music came on cassette tapes, and we got really good at sticking a pencil in the cassette tape, right, and rolling the tape up. And we had to rewind and fast forward to get to the music that we wanted to hear. And then along came CDs, which were much better, much more durable. The tape didn't get caught in the player, although sometimes the CDs got caught because people jammed stuff in there. But it was a better medium, but you still had to have a player. You were still restricted to what was on that disc. Then came music streaming, and it upended the market, right? You can buy one song. You don't have to buy the album, right? You can stream it on multi-devices. And that mindset of change and dramatic shifted the music industry. That is what cloud has done for technology. And I would say to you also, generative AI will do to data and data science. And so living in that world of the change was about doing a project. We had an aspiration, did a project, but then we expected to kind of return to business as usual. You did a project in ERP implementation, some other type of implementation, but everybody thought, okay, we did the project, now we go back to normal. This is a world where there is no new normal. We are in a world where there is no target state. We have to have organizations that can accept constant change. And that conversation is not just a technology conversation. It is a full organization conversation to succeed in the world that we are operating in. We need to accept that we're not going to go back to the good old days, to the days pre-pandemic, to the days whatever is your organization's wish for the good old days. They're done. There are going to be better days ahead, but we're going forward, and we need to help our organizations lean in. And that actually requires that you change how you talk, change the vocabulary that you use when you're managing technology, We have to move from this world of absolutes and investments and budget, timeline, capacity. I grew up in this world. We are now in a world of relatives and rates, price per unit, burn rate, velocity, consumption, and the cost of experimentation. And I will tell you, after being at Coca-Cola, I was there for 26 years. Joining Amazon, I've been with Amazon now 6.5 years. One of the most powerful things to making me productive at Amazon is the fact that we have a common language. We have consistent words for how we operate, the mechanisms that we use across the world. I get the great opportunity to travel to different geographies, and when I use an Amazon term like dive deep or working backwards, my colleagues in Japan understand what I'm talking about. My colleagues in Italy, where I spoke this summer, know what I'm talking about. There is power in language and getting a language for your organization, I would submit to you, is something to think about and leverage. Cloud enables this economies of speed model. It gets us out of those long planning cycles, and you can act quickly at lower cost. If you try something, it doesn't work, shut it down, try something else. But that also means you've got to move to a smaller model of projects. And so what I suggest that you think through with your organization is create an organization that can develop streaming, not one that's just upgrading cassette tapes with compact disc, right? I think sometimes we call that modernizing. To be truly modern, you have to embrace an agile environment. So that takes us to like the classic conflict of IT. I was a CIO, I get the conflict, right? IT's about harmonizing, standardizing. But I came from marketing into IT, and my marketing colleagues were like, go speed up IT. It's too slow, the planning is too long, they're asking me questions that I don't care about, I'm trying to deliver against a business objective. And that is part of the problem is we have different operating models. The business has an operating model that is about business capabilities, business process, and has a business workforce. They are measured on new ideas and innovation, speed and agility, creating value and results for the business. IT often, because we are obviously responsible for operational excellence, cost optimization, and security, become a very different type of business. And I had, at times in my career, teams that didn't really understand what the business did for a living. You have to get your team more embedded with your business partners so it matters to them. What is the business trying to create? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And so creating a world where you move these operating models together, and in the center, we deliver digital products and services. We still have our responsibility of operational excellence. The cloud makes that easier. We still are responsible for security. The cloud certainly makes our world more secure. Prior to moving to cloud at Coke, and we moved early. We started in 2014 and done in cloud by 2018. So it's pretty fast for a major enterprise. But what we were doing prior to that, we were writing our own security software. A soft drink company should never, ever write security software, right? The best security engineers are at the cloud providers. They're not at the Coca-Cola company. And so the investment profile is also a challenge, because we'd invest in something this year, but then it wouldn't be a priority next year. Security always has to be a priority. So getting into a foundation that enables you to be agile and focus with your business on the digital products and services aligned with the business strategy is what we are trying to create in this partnership. And your business wants this. They are asking, what are we doing with generative AI? What are we doing in cloud? And so having that right answer so that we can come together and have standards, but also have innovation. We want speed, but certainly also quality. We want some level of customization, but we want it low cost. And we want short-term gains, but we don't want to be swapping out technology constantly. We want long-term viability. And that partnership with the advances in technology is now truly, truly possible. But to move into this world, you have to change how you work. It's not just adopting new technology platforms. It is how you manage that environment, those teams, and those platforms. I've done a couple of times with companies, had a conversation about process barriers, right? We got down in a room and on a whiteboard said, okay, who is empowered in your organization to say no, to stop work? Very quickly, we made a list. Legal can stop work, security can stop work, the PMO can stop work, architecture can stop work, right? There's this long list. Finance can stop work. Then we looked at the other board and said, who is empowered to say yes to green light work? And people kind of looked at each other and said, well, maybe you are, you're the CIO. You can probably go get something pushed through. That is what I'm talking about when you have to change your processes and your operating model. You can't just put in cloud, put in new technology, but operate the way you've always operated. You have to rethink how you manage, how you are structured, and importantly, how you lead in this world. And you have to do that. Aligned incentives will help you, because you can't just tune your current operating model and assume that people are going to operate differently. We did that at Coke. We took our infrastructure team and called them cloud. Okay, we just changed their job title, right? That didn't actually change how we were working. So it requires more. It requires rethinking your levers. Because transformation is not about doing the same things better, cassette tapes to CDs. It's about doing new things and doing them differently. So that means you've got to think about structure, you've got to think about process, you've got to think about your guardrails or whatever you call them, and the way you grant exceptions. Because what we want you to consider is moving to a model where you create flywheels, you create and maintain momentum. You reduce the friction in your environment. You deploy consistent mechanisms, and you foster autonomy so your team can get caught thinking. I had a chief marketing officer at Coca-Cola that said that to us. I want you to get caught thinking, not just doing tasks. So if you look at this structure, right, organization often, when people transform, is the first thing that they tackle, and they restructure, or a new leader comes in and they restructure. And if you look at this, you go, okay, which of these is higher performing? Well, many people would say the flat one, right? We took out a layer, so that's probably better. But the question would be, it depends, right, on how it's organized. Because if I said to you, wait, these are agile teams here that have cross-functional knowledge and skills, and this side over here has segmented product management out from QA, out from development. I lived in those matrix world. And it's challenging because everybody has different objectives. We are not trying to deliver the same teams. These agile teams need to have shared objectives. Because these handoffs between a cloud center of excellence over to the application team, over to the product team, over to the innovation team, like there's one team that's going to do all the innovation, right? And supported by an infra team. I get it. I lived it. I imagine some of you are still living it. We are trying to remove friction from how we operate, and aligned incentives help. We see this when we're in crisis. We suddenly all know what needs to get done, and we pull the right people and empower them, because if something's down or there's a problem, we know we need a security guy, we need this apps guy, we need this architecture person, we need somebody from the business to understand the change that we're about to make, and suddenly we're all aligned on a clear objective. But when we go back to Monday morning, we go back to our boxes, and we are not driving always in the same direction. So think about driving aligned incentives. Cloud helps this, right? By allowing you to free up some of your resources so that you have more time to work with your business partners, to identify opportunities, to get your platform modernized so that you can not sweat the small stuff and you can move up the stack. We want shorter cycle times, more experimentation, smaller applications, smaller releases have a smaller blast radius, right? If you're doing a huge go live with a huge application, what is human nature? What do we do when you're doing a huge go live? We implement a lot of controls. We have to meet, we have to review, we have an extra steering committee, an extra review. When the blast radius is smaller, you can release much more frequently because the impact of an issue will not be so large. So anything you can do, I know it's not always possible, but anything you can do to shrink your applications and your releases so you can go live more frequently, fix, and go again. That will enable you to have more ideas, create the agility and the mindset in your team of speed. This, Top Gun's back out, the need for speed, right, is very real in our world. And so structure is a means to an end. It is the feedback loops that you need to drive continual improvement. Another analogy for you, I've gotten to spend some time with the Formula One team. And they're doing some amazing things with data, right? Because you need some really real-time data if you're driving a car at those speeds. But an interesting question Why do cars have brakes? Right? Most of us would say, or at least my gut would say, well, so that I can slow down, I can stop. But you have brakes, actually, so you can go faster, right? So you have comfort that I can take these turns at speed because I have a good set of brakes. Brakes are just as important as the engine, right, in improving speed. But what happens, and this is the world often we live in, when we drive with the brakes on all the time? Right? The friction that creates in organizations where we don't allow people to go fast because we're just riding with the brakes on and we're slowing down because we don't have the right structure, we don't have the right mechanisms, we don't know. So we're doing constant checks. So friction is an enemy to getting to this model of economies of speed, because as you have these larger programs, you have higher risk, you have more controls, therefore you have more overhead. And we insert it in between the pieces, so it is a challenge to unwind. But we need to spend time with your teams. They know where the issues are. They know what is slowing them down. Our suggestion is smaller projects, lower risk, fewer controls, less overhead. You may have to lean into this and learn. It may take you a minute. I have 3 grown children, and I didn't hand them the car keys and tell them to go out and drive at 5 years old. We learned our way into responsibility, right? Give them a juice cup without a top on it, make sure they don't spill it, right? You've got to get your team to learn how to be autonomous, how to make their own decisions, because we have been checking people for so long that they don't feel comfortable going fast. Because they're thinking somebody, we called them snipers at Coke. There are snipers out there that might take you out if you stepped off the path in the wrong way. So getting in, starting to lean into smaller projects, teaching your team how to operate differently so that they course correct. You don't shoot them for an error. We're trying to go fast. We don't shoot them when we're in crisis. When there's a problem, we just say, oh, try something else, try something else, try something else till we're back up. So how do you bring that into your everyday working? Again, it's about working differently. And I love this quote from Jeff, that good processes serve you so you can serve your business and your customers. But if the process becomes the proxy for the results you're looking for, you got a problem. You've got to focus on the actual result. Some people get into a mode of just checking the process box, right? And that's how I defer accountability. I'm not accountable for security. The security team's going to check. I'm not accountable for the architecture team's going to check, right? And they didn't give me the authority, so I'm just letting them check. It's where we get ourselves into a world of hurt. One more analogy for you. Trains. Interesting. And this has been the design for trains for a long time. But again, how do trains go fast? They actually have a tapered wheel. So if the train starts getting unstable, the wheels swing out and start rotating on the larger side of the taper. And that is a self-correcting mechanism that keeps trains on track. How do you create self-correcting mechanisms in your business so that teams don't get off track. You give them, and we talked a bit about builders' tools. You need some great people in your builder tools team that are enabling your organization so that they have the right capability to move fast. You've got to streamline decision-making. Get a set of principles that everyone understands, whether that's based on language or just how we work, and then resource it properly. Because the other way of managing is just sticking yourself in the middle of that process. And I found I did that early on in my career. I was sitting in my office and there was a line forming outside my door. And I was thinking, I need one of those ticket-taking machines, right? So people, and that meant actually that I was not doing a good job as a manager. Because why did everybody have to line up to get me to make a decision about something that they were much closer to than I was? But you'll find sometimes that you've got to do self-assessment of how am I leading my team? Am I actually asking them the question, or am I taking that from them? And then that creates that line, right, of people going, well, she obviously wants to check or wants to know, or I need to give an update. It slows down the organization. It creates friction. How do you get out of the way and use mechanisms that create the transparency, create the feedback you need? I want to know if things are on track, but if you can use mechanisms so you can check, that is a faster process for your team. Guardrails, we talked about guardrails, and that got to be kind of common vernacular, but slamming into a guardrail is not a great experience, as it turns out, right? You want mechanisms like the train that's going to self-correct. Because if I hit the guardrail, right, I've got some recovery. I've got some fixes to do to the car and maybe to me. So how do you create mechanisms that self-correct instead? Another thing to contemplate, and maybe this isn't an issue for you, but it certainly was an issue for us, the question around how long does it take to get a resource? Well, often the answer is depends on who's asking, right? If it's this person asking, well, it's pretty fast. If it's this team asking, well, it could be months. That's not a way to run your organization, but it is very true in many organizations. And so what we're suggesting, anything that you can do to create more autonomous teams so that they have the right skills, they have the right authority to move fast, to make decisions. And, you know, autonomy isn't about anarchy. It isn't everybody go do whatever the heck you want. That is not what we mean by autonomous teams. There is a structure, there are mechanisms, there are the procedures, things that you have to do. But you as an organization need to make decisions about, okay, we're all going to use the same platform, but here is where the teams get to decide. They choose the execution. At Amazon, we talk about being stubborn on the vision, but flexible on the details of how you get there. And cloud enables this democratization because you have immediate access to resources. You have controls and transparency without all of the bottlenecks that we used to experience. And you can do constant innovation, but you have to have all the right governance in place so you can check. But that shouldn't slow the individual teams down. So getting that balance right so your team understands and they can move at speed is what you're looking for. and with an aligned objective and outcome. If the answer to the question I ask is, it depends on who is asking, it's kind of a black market for resources, right? So be aware. Look at your organization. Where do you have these challenges? And what can you do to unwind that approach? Because some leaders have just gotten used to it, right? And they're just like, oh, this is the way we operate. It's become normal operating procedure. That's you got to unwind that and get to a place that you are so fast and capable that they don't have to go around you to get work done. I had that situation. I was responsible for all digital properties at the Coca-Cola Company, all websites, all mobile apps, all mobile games, all the big events like the Olympics and the World Cup. And there were teams all over the world trying to go fast. And so we had to create an approach that enabled the teams to innovate while also ensuring that we had a secure environment, that we weren't going to get hacked, that promotions would run effectively. We wouldn't give away like 5 cars instead of the one that was promised, right? You have to have the right governance and processes. But if we have this pattern of people going around, going to a senior leader to get an exception, to get something done, that it takes a minute to unwind. You've got to get some support, but it was critical to me solving problems of hacks and attacks at the Coke system. So, your journey to economies of speed, I said move away from just structure to create flywheels. Blindly following process versus managing and reducing friction. Be wary of just imposed constraints. Create mechanisms that help you work differently. And avoid just granting exceptions. Understand why someone's asking for an exception and create a different approach that actually delivers value, but in the way that you are trying to get the organization to work. And, you know, along these lines, we did a number of things that helped us create an environment that was able to improve continuously, to move faster while still staying on track and allowing markets to decide locally. So brief Coke story. You know, I was running all of these websites and loyalty platforms and gaming platforms, and we were getting attacked all over the world. You could Google, right, how to hack the Coke, you know, My Coke Rewards, if you remember that one, or Coke Play in Korea. There were lots out there on how to game our systems. And we needed security and consistency. But there was not a lot of faith in IT, who sits in Atlanta, Georgia, when you are running an experience in the Far East. And so we had to come up with a different way of working. And so we moved to a concept that we called freedom within a framework. There are certain things that were required, certain ways we were going to operate, like login registration, my team was going to own and manage. Algorithms for promotions, my team was going to own and manage. But innovating in the consumer experience space, localizing it for local culture and content, that was up to the markets. So I had gold standard services that were robust and were an API call away, that then our markets knew the framework that they could operate in and they could go fast. We also took it a step farther, and we certified agencies around the world in our approach so that they were not saying, oh, it's IT in Atlanta that's slowing you down. and they're doing deals with our local markets, they wanted to be Coke-certified agencies. And so then they were on board. And so you've got to unwind, what are the problems? My problems were the finger pointing. My problems were getting attacked, right? My problems were things that I had to get a team in a room, think about, is there another way that we could operate so that we could provide this capability of improving continuous, moving faster, staying on track, and importantly, in the Coke system, deciding locally. So leading in economies of speed is a whole different game than leading in a project-based model. Especially in today's world, because we had these kind of edicts of reduce IT cost, right? Migrate workloads. Let's become agile. We make these statements, but then we didn't actually always do the things that you need to do to operate different, because we were in an environment with brittle systems. We were in this place where, okay, we migrated to cloud, but we just kind of lift and shifted all our problems into the cloud and created a data center in the cloud. That was not taking advantage of the technology, creating the right foundations. We just did this renaming of people. Okay, now I have a cloud team. You have to get underneath it, because simple goals, these simple moves, will not make the change. We have to understand the engine room. You need your architects to understand and have expertise in your environments. You cannot be outside of that and have this black box that runs, that, there's the guy, Bob, that knows how to run it, but if Bob gets hit by a bus, we're all in big trouble, right? We need to understand our environments and make sure that we are constantly optimizing those environments. You need to recognize and talk through the fact that technical decisions will impact your future ability to move. Right? With generative AI, I'm talking to all sorts of companies that have not yet gotten a decent data strategy in place. So you're not going to be able to take advantage at today's speed and leverage generative AI if you don't have your data strategy in place, you don't understand yet governance of that data. If you're still sitting with data in silos, there's work to be done. The good news is that your business partners should now be interested. Often data was regulated to the back office. I led business intelligence for the Coke system. Data often got pushed to the back office. In today's world, it has to be part of everything you're doing, and you need to understand the governance of that data. And then your business strategy and your IT strategy have to be aligned. We can't go over here and do an IT strategy and go over here and do a business strategy and try to hook up later. We have also had to change how we work. The organizational desires of people staying in the role, taking direction, doing what I say, and then we maybe reskill, but often in my history, training budgets were the first things cut. People want clarity of career path and progression. They want the autonomy to work on great things. If they joined your organization, they want to understand the purpose of your organization and want the opportunity to drive change for your organization. We want to be constantly looking at the market and looking at our talent and make sure that we are in line with the market. And you have to create a continuous learning environment. The technology is changing too fast The opportunities are too great. Your team needs to be constantly learning. And if you have needs for training, we have some great training resources available to you. People often ask me, so how do I go get these new people? You have the people you need. You've just got to retrain them. You can't just go dump the whole team and get a whole new team. That isn't the answer. You might need some hire for some skill gaps. Absolutely, I did. But the reason the people operate the way they do is because that's the way you've taught them to work. You've got to unwind them, give them an opportunity to work differently. Are there some people that won't get in the boat? Yes. I had people that didn't want to get in the boat, didn't want to move to cloud. Some just chose to run out the legacy systems and retire with those legacy systems. That's fine, right? But you can retrain your people to work in this new model. But it requires creating role models and rewards for this new behavior, not just a poster in the hallway or a slogan that we're agile. You can't just relabel. You have to look at what are the new skills we need and who is a candidate to take on that new role. And as I said earlier, you need to be stubborn on the vision, but flexible on the details of how you get there. Let your people have some autonomy to lead. A modern technology leader manages complex systems and understands the relationships, but also is leading an organization through change with purpose and empathy. It is a great environment that we now get to operate in, but it requires a different way of working, a different way of managing. And I think, there's some benefit that the pandemic changed the way some organizations now manage. So that was a bit of a good shakeup. I think some organizations are trying to get back to the way they used to work pre-pandemic. But there's some great things that we learn about speed of decision making, about flexibility in workforce, about people jumping in and solving problems. And so thinking about what worked for you in your organization, what made an impact, is important to understand. That is all I have for you today. There are a lot of resources. Our team has an executive insights blog. There are conversational leaders videos that you can watch. So please grab any of these resources. But I hope I've said something in the last 45 minutes or so that's helpful to you. And I'm happy I'll be up here if anybody has any questions. Thank you.